In this episode of Doing Economics, we're going to continue our examination of the relationship between the inflation rate and the unemployment rate. In the last episode, we were looking at the short-run relationship between inflation and unemployment. And what we discovered was that if a society values a low unemployment rate, say 4%, that society then is going to have to tolerate a higher inflation rate, say 6%. Whereas if a country values a lower inflation rate, then that country is going to have to tolerate a higher unemployment rate. In 1960, a man named Milton Friedman attacked this idea of a permanent downward sloping Phillips curve. Friedman felt there was not just one, but two curves. There was a short-run Phillips curve and a long-run Phillips curve. He believed there was always going to be this temporary trade-off in the short run, but when it came to the long run, there would be no permanent trade-off. In order to understand what Friedman was saying, let's go down here and take a look at figure 4 and let's look at the ADAS curve. Now, before we look at this AD curve, I want to add an AS curve, an aggregate supply. Let's look at point A. What do we know about point A? We know at point A, we are at full employment, which means we are producing at our maximum amounts and we are demanding those goods. This is where every economy strives to be. But what we know is we want to be there, but chances are we're never there for that long. So let's just say that AD goes up. And remember, AD is consumption, investment, government spending, and foreign. And what we mean is this. For AD to shift right, to shift up, one of these four groups in the economy is going to have to demand more. So let's say, for example, business feels optimistic about the future and they demand more goods. So then that takes us to this point right here. We're going to call this point C. We know we're going to be at C for the short run. We know in the short run, wages are not going to increase immediately. We know that A, people are not aware that price level has gone up, and B, even if they are aware, that they can't ask for a raise until their contract is up. Once that contract is up, what's going to happen is people are going to begin to ask for a raise. And what's going to happen is the AS is going to shift then to the left. Shifts to the left because now they're paying their employees more and they don't have as much money. So once again, we go from A, full employment, to C, which is really in the time of inflation, back to B, which is full employment. So if you look in the long run, what you can see is in the long run, unemployment, the natural rate of output, does not change. The only thing that changes is price level. So if we go back to the Phillips curve up here and we look at Milton Friedman's version of the Phillips curve, he says the same thing. In the long run, the natural rate of unemployment, full employment, does not change. That the only thing that changes in the long run is the inflation rate. Now, let's look at what this looks like on this graph right here. Now remember, when we're talking about the Phillips curve, notice this is the rate of unemployment and this is the rate of employment. So what we have to do is think of this as a mirror. Because unemployment is opposite of output and employment, whatever we do here has to be the opposite on here. So let's take a look at this. We start off at A, we're at full employment. So here we are at A, we're at full employment. Okay, AD goes up. Now we know when AD goes up, you see price level is going to go up and GDP goes up. Well, how do we show that on this graph? Well, we show it by a movement along the line. You can see by moving from A in this case to B, which is our number C here, or our letter C, you can see that the price level goes up and the unemployment goes down. Basically, that's what we have here. So a shift of the AD curve is a movement along the short-run Phillips curve. Now, from our discussion in the last episode, we know that when AS shifts, that's going to then shift the short-run Phillips curve. So, for example, when wages go up and businesses can't produce as much, that's a shift to the left that puts us back in on the long run. Well, because this is a mirror image, a shift to the left here is a shift to the right here. So the end result is the same thing that we saw over here for long-run aggregate supply. The natural rate of unemployment did not change. The only thing that changed was the inflation rate. So, in review, what we can learn, in the short-run Phillips curve, there is a temporary trade-off between inflation and unemployment. In the long run, there is no such trade-off. The only thing that's going to move in the long run is the inflation rate. So if people believe there's going to be an increase in inflation, there will be an increase in inflation because they will ask for higher wages, and then businesses won't produce as much, and therefore it puts us back on that line with no change in natural rate of output or full employment, just a change in inflation rate.